Welcome to the second part of the online conference, Innovating for Greener Future in Asia in partnership with AREA, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, and the Asian Network, and to our third panel, Environmental Future in Asia, Opportunities and Hope. I'm Ravindran Go, founder and CEO of the Asian Network, and your moderator for this session. Before introducing you to our distinguished speakers, we are honored to hear from the opening remarks of Mr. Erik Solheim, former Norwegian Minister of Environment.
Hello everyone, namaste, ni hao. I'm so grateful to Economic Research Institute of East Asia and ASEAN and to the Asian Network for the opportunity to speak about the exciting opportunities for the green transformation in Asia. Let me briefly share 3 ideas with you. First of all, this is the Asian century. Asia will lead the charge into the green economy. China is now the lead nation on every singular green technology. 82% of all solar panels last year, 70% of all electric batteries were made in China. But India is moving fast in the same direction under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, who's launching green hydrogen mission, electric battery missions, and number of missions to turn India green. And remind yourself, China and India alone is 37% of the global population. Second, it's not about diplomacy, it's about business. Huawei is using its enormous competence in the 4th industrial revolution to make solar power more efficient or to protect whales or salmon, even in my home country of Norway. In Indonesia, the biggest or second biggest paper and pulp company in the world, RGE, also one of the biggest palm oil companies in the world, are protecting an enormous rainforest in Sumatra, and there's zero deforestation in the value chain. And thanks to good policies from the Jokowi government, as well as these impetus from business, last year Indonesia was down to zero deforestation. What a triumph for the second biggest rainforest nation in the world. And thirdly, it's about combining environment and climate, protection of nature, and fighting climate change. We have all the policies and all the technologies and all the finance to do this. President Xi has promised that China will plant an area the size of Belgium every year from now to 2030. In India, you see a state like Tamil Nadu, the size of Germany, increasing its tree cover from 22 to 32% in the next decade. And the Chief Minister of the state of Madhya Pradesh is planting 1 tree every day, simply to make the point that we need to make the planet greener. If you combine these 3, the leadership of Asia, the leadership of business, and the opportunity to make the planet a much greener and much more pleasant place, we have a recipe for how Asia will transform the world in the next decades. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Erik Solheim, to emphasize on those 3 core pillars: leadership in Asia, leadership of business, and opportunities to make the planet much greener. Let me introduce now to our 3 speakers. Our first speaker is Megan Argyriou from Australia. Megan was a founding executive at Climate Work Center and spearheaded the organization expansion into the Indo-Pacific region, leading collaboration with government, development finance institutions, international NGOs, and global philanthropies to catalyze systematic change to solve the climate crisis. She's currently a strategic and visionary leader. Welcome, Megan. Our second speaker is Catarina Mvigalic from Canada and currently located in Portugal. Catarina is currently CEO of Sergi Sustec Powerhouse. Catarina led SDGs and Ethic Commissions and Women in Tech Alliances at the EU Tech Chamber, Business Info Center with Government of Canada, and she chairs the ESG World Summit and GRIT Award. She is currently a PhD candidate Sustainable Energy System at the MIT Portugal. Welcome, Catarina. Last but not least, Our third speaker is Dr. Vanarat Cheng from Cambodia. Vanarat is a public policy analyst, policy communicator, government relations strategist, partnership building specialist, and educator. Currently, he's serving as president of the Asian Vision Institute, AVI, where he heads projects on geopolitical risk analysis, leadership development, sustainable development, inclusive digital economy, and digital data governance. Welcome, Vanarat. Let me address this first question, Megan. From your previous experience and institution, you design and deliver high-impact climate initiatives across Australia and Southeast Asia. Would you be able to give us some example of successful projects to adapt to climate challenge in the region? Thank you.
Thanks, Ravindra. Sorry, I couldn't get my words out. Thanks, Ravindra. So Climate Works, particularly in our work in Southeast Asia, we work very closely with governments across the region. And we've done quite a lot of work in Indonesia, actually. We have a team there on the ground. And I would say for me, I really think that climate change is an everything problem, although we tend to, in the way we deal with it, governments often put it in a particular department, the environment department. There's a climate change team within that department. But actually, really, to address it properly and fully, we do need much more comprehensive coordination across government and really embedded thinking about climate change and how to address it, how to mitigate the risks and how to adapt to it, embedded in thinking right across government programs and policies. And so, I think one example of a successful project that I think does that quite well is some work that my team in Indonesia did with the Ministry of Finance. And this was, as part of their COVID recovery package, the fiscal stimulus package that the government of Indonesia put out, designed by the Ministry of Finance. My team worked closely with them to help them embed climate change considerations into that fiscal stimulus. And so, I think that's a really good example of how a government program, sort of a package of financial support that's designed very clearly with one outcome in mind, which is to, sort of kickstart the economy, stimulate growth again post-pandemic, can also be done in a way that can address another problem, which is climate change. So that sort of integrated thinking, I think, is really important, and for me is a sign of a successful project.
Thank you, Megan. I think, involving governments and also other stakeholders make a successful, project, and we will be seeing in the discussions that also other stakeholders will be important in that matter. So now I'm asking to Katharina. You're really focusing on transforming partnership, driving change with purpose, and impact. Those are some of your personal and professional key drivers. So how those values can serve to tackle environmental issues? Thank you.
Thank you for a great question. Collaboration is very important. There's a lot of amazing things that people do in different countries, but we don't hear of them because we don't collaborate a lot. And so when we look at the stakeholders who should collaborate, starting from the startups who are integrating sustainability in their frameworks when they found their businesses, which is much easier than with the big corporations. However, they can do it in a very easy way if there's a system in place and if there's an interest to do that in the best possible. So when we talk about the stakeholders, these are the businesses. Then we have the governments as well. The government and the policymakers need an information and some intelligence, some data from and actual businesses to find out what is the best way, how to create policies that will actually help businesses integrate sustainability even more. And then we have public, and we also have academy as well. So educational institutions that needs to be part of the whole sustainability system. And of course, on the top of everything, I would like to put youth because they are the one that should be leading great discussions with new ideas, with new ways how to collaborate. Without collaboration, we can do amazing things and we can do really quite effective things, but it's not going to make a big impact. So that's a very important thing. And when we accelerate that, it just means that we're growing the good things in, creating the habits. Would it be a personal, a community, or business as well? When we create habits, and it could be ethical as well, that businesses can integrate in their operations, this is very important. This will lead us into the change, a positive change that a lot of stakeholders will be open to accept that.
Agree with you, Katarina. I think strengthening multilateral collaboration with greater networking, but also social inclusions may prevail, and that's something we should and must do in the future. So now let me ask to Vanarot these questions. The Mekong Delta face increasing climatic and environmental change driven by global climate change, but also other human activities. What are the options to tackle the corresponding pressures, and how intermediary levels of governance could help drive the biophysical dynamics of the Mekong Delta in a sustainable direction?
Thank you for the opportunity to share, and glad to be part of this panel. And I just would like to reinforce the statements that mentioned by our distinguished two panelists here. That is very important, multi-stakeholder partnership. That is the way forward. With regards to the Mekong region, it's not only the Mekong Delta, but the whole Mekong regions is facing what we call it a very kind of unprecedented challenges caused by climate change, construction of hydropower dams along the mainstream, of course the very fast unsustainable urbanization, industrialization, together with the population growth. This is the kind of critical turning point in the Mekong region. If we don't take a very responsive, urgent policy intervention to manage the biodiversity, especially this kind of to ensure that the Mekong River still flows. So that is very important, because it is a source of everything. The Mekong River is a source of livelihood, a source of biodiversity, fishery, and others. And of course, in the Mekong Delta, the southern part of Vietnam is facing more challenges due to the sea level rise. So sea level rise and the saltifications of agricultural lands, and which affect the local livelihood there. So I don't have the solution, but I only can call upon different stakeholders to work together and to put environment people first. So this kind of environmental justice, social justice, and economic justice should be part of their thinking, part of their doing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vanarot. Yeah, let's. I think people first, environment first. I think that's something as well we should prevail. So let me start the second round of questions with Katarina. You're currently having your PhD Sustainable Energy System at MIT Portugal. In today's global energy transitions, request leaders who can navigate across technical, societal, but also environmental challenge. According to you, how to achieve a sustainable energy future?
That's a great question, and it's very difficult to give an answer because it requires a lot of stakeholders, a lot of factors that impact that. But I think innovation is very important. It is actually critical for advancing these sustainable energy solutions. And so one of the things is really to increase the share of renewable energy in the energy mix. So it's solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, biomass. We're talking about hydrogen as well. And a good thing is that the corporate venture capital, so we have big companies who are deciding that they will support sustainability energy development. And so even if they're not in the industry, they really want to invest and make sure that scientists, research and development, PhDs have an opportunity to build something that will be beneficial for the society. And so what they do is really businesses and the venture capitalists are playing a crucial role by investing in those renewable energy projects, in working with startups to build a new solution for adopting the clean energy technologies. On another side, the government, we really trust that the government needs to be part of this ecosystem, again, to support what has been done. And this time it comes from the corporations, because to increase the share of the energy mix, we really need resources to do that. And the big corporations would be able to do that as well. And I know that there's some companies around the world that are doing a great job, but we really want to engage as much as possible, as many companies, that really make a big impact. And so I really want to emphasize that to achieve the sustainable energy future, it does require collaboration across many stakeholders, but we really want to make sure that investors are somebody who's leading a role in that. I work with a lot of startups, and if investor chooses to invest in a company that is producing green energy, it gives them an opportunity really to build up something great that will change the way how energy mix works. So again, the collaboration of different sectors, but as well, we need to have a lot of different stakeholders to make sure that energy has been explored in a different ways, so we can find solutions for the future. What we do as well, we work with students who are exploring what they want to do for their master's degree, what they want to do for their PhD, and a lot of research. And in this way, we're really helping them to find out what areas they would like to do their PhD and what do they want to research more. So we put them together with the companies in order to create benefits for both of them, for a researcher and the companies that are investing into energy technologies as well.
Thank you, Katarina. You mentioned, I think, something very important, which is the ecosystem, but also access to finance. It's also something, also another point. Now I'm asking to Vanarath. The Asian Vision Institute launched with Konrad Adenauer-Stiftung a book which provides insights into climate change governance in ASEAN with regard to mitigation, adaptations, and climate finance. What are the key takeaways in kind of opportunities that you might share with us? Thank you, Vanarath.
Thanks. I think that the key point here is that our response to climate change is quite uneven, depending on the national capacities. And of course, Southeast Asia or ASEAN is quite diverse in almost all sectors: political system, economic development, and people capacity, institutional capacity, governance, institution, and so on. So it's very difficult to have a harmonized and coherent regional response due to this uneven or kind of inequality in capacity and resources. But anyway, a shared political will across the region. And last year, Cambodia, as the chair of ASEAN, introduced the concept ASEAN Green Deal. Now, Indonesia, as the chair, will carry on forward. And AVI is proud to be part of the team to draft a concept note on ASEAN Green Deal, still working on it. But anyway, when we talk about Green Deal, it's not only about environmental issues, it's about also social justice, about economic justice and people livelihood and so on. So it's a big keyword moving forward across Southeast Asia. So climate change is part of the ASEAN Green Deal because and climate change itself is a very complex issue already. And then energy transitions and access to green finance. Green financing now become quite popular among different stakeholders. But anyway, it's still a long way to go when it comes to green financing. But we have secured certain momentum, and we need to maintain this momentum moving forward.
Thank you, Vanarath. Before we heading to our Q&A session, I have a last question. Megan, decarbonizations and climate technology to thrive in Southeast Asia might be some solutions to mitigate with climate change, but it requires complexity in changing the system and introducing new climate technology into a market. What are your recommendations there?
Yeah, thanks, Ravindra. That's a really interesting question. And I think my key recommendation is the need to stop thinking about climate action and the introduction of technologies as a cost, and instead to see it as an opportunity. So the world cannot solve climate change without the Asia region. There's absolutely no way that we can stabilise temperatures unless this region acts ambitiously as with the rest of the world. But that should also deliver economic growth opportunities for this region. And the region is actually particularly well placed to take advantage of the demand, the explosion of demand for green technologies over the next 30 years. The region has critical minerals resources. It has strong manufacturing capabilities. It already manufactures a lot of components that are used in low carbon technologies, as well as experience in assembly and export of everything from solar panels to EVs to other sorts of technologies, like energy efficient equipment and so on. So I think really thinking about how we link those two things, climate strategy on the one hand and industrial strategy, industrial policy on the other, is the key to sort of really catalysing this transformation that's required in the adoption of clean technologies. And then I think that there's also a really important opportunity, back to the point that Katerina made around collaboration, for particularly ASEAN countries to think about how they can coordinate the establishment and building of value chains across the region in order to meet just even regional demand for low carbon technologies, and to really build capability and sort of export competitiveness through that sort of a process. But I do just want to pick up on something that Vannerice said as well, because I think it's a really important point, which is that we can't just throw ourselves at this blindly, that this is a fantastic economic opportunity, but it does come with a lot of risks as well in terms of the environmental and social implications of rapid industrialisation. We are in the midst of a biodiversity crisis, for example, and a lot of critical minerals are found in sensitive areas, in areas that are conserved already, and so on. We have to be very careful about how we proceed with those sorts of processes, and similarly with processing those minerals as well. Value adding them, if not done well, it can create all sorts of environmental catastrophes. Similarly, there could be a tendency to sort of, open up and liberalise markets in order to attract foreign direct investment. And at times that can involve things like loosening social protections. Asia overall, 80% of the population live in countries where social inequality is increasing. So this potential boom, this economic opportunity, needs to be done in a way that actually addresses that rising inequality and delivers equitable green growth for all.
Yeah, thank you, Megan, for this very interesting point. I think that, on panel on session one, Ambu, who is a senior economist research at AREA, pinpoint and underline 3 mega trends for the technology adoption in Asia. First one is at the macro level, renewable energy and technology. The second mega trend is at the city level with ICT and digital technology. And finally, at the micro level, it's each individual can really focus on energy saving. So I was really finding this thought important and want to share before we go to our Q&A sessions. So we got some questions in the chat box. Perhaps I will pick one from now from Tiajin, who asked, what more do you think can be done to strengthen stakeholder collaboration across public, private, and even people sectors? Perhaps, Katarina, you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. I really believe in education. I think a lot of parts of this is we need to educate ourselves on what sustainability means. The green energy as well. There's a lot of things, as Megan mentioned, all those things can be great and positive and good, but we know that it can be taken, turned around in a different way and used in a negative way, which we don't want. And that's why we need to educate people. When I'm thinking people, I'm thinking when they start kindergarten, we need to educate them to know what to do, how to reuse, how to recycle, how to, what is the waste, and how do we take care of the green resources that we have in our countries And when we collaborate with, because those people will become politicians one day, they will become heads of states, big companies, so they need to know the value, but also ethical principality is very important. So I think education is really something that we should start with.
Thank you, Katerina.
You're welcome.
Someone else want to answer, or I pick another question? There is a lot. Okay, great, Megan.
I was just going to add to that, that I think, our tendency can be to talk to people who work in our sector, who work in our space, who share our sort of expertise, and that is definitely the easiest way to get things done. But I would say through hard-learned experience that actually when you take the time to talk to a much broader range of people, to get a much broader range of perspectives, and that you can build consensus towards a shared outcome, that outcome tends to stick much better. It tends to have much better buy-in and support from a broad range of stakeholders. So it's never the easiest path, but it is always the most successful path ultimately.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, completely agree.
Bernadette, you want to add something?
I just believe in the power of mind. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm taking now a question from Kirsty Ulm, Managing Director, SureStep in Asia, and she asking to the panelists, the consumer will start demanding transparency from manufacturers, the hidden area from general consumers. Do you think transparency will encourage more action and regulation? Good question. Okay, Megan.
You go first.
I was just going to jump in and say transparency always encourages greater action.
True.
And, so I think I absolutely 100% support any forms of transparency in terms of how products and services are created, the emissions associated with them. I'm going to give you an example from Australia here, but we had a program some years back where big industry was required to publicly report on its energy use. Not even emissions, nothing like that, just energy use. And what that did, and they didn't have to do anything about it, they just had to report publicly on it. But what that did was elevated the view of energy use to the highest levels within those organisations, who were all very, very energy intensive. And suddenly when the board is looking at it, there become much greater focus within the organisation, and sure enough, they all implemented substantial energy efficiency improvements just through that one action of transparency. So I think transparency makes people accountable, and it makes them aware of those shortcomings in their own approaches and processes that they might not otherwise be aware of.
Yes, I just want to add that transparency also promotes trust.
Yeah.
Trust is very critical to this stakeholder partnership, engagement and so on. So I think we need to keep pressing on different stakeholders to be more transparent, because it's good for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Bernadette.
What I would like to add to what Wennerit said and Megan is that for the people who have companies and are producing the products or services, look at your life cycle of your product. In every step of a life cycle, you have stakeholders, and they need to be transparent. You need to know who they are, where the resources are coming from, how the process has been done, who has been employed to deliver those. This is transparency. Once you know all of that, those companies will be more profitable because they are creating more trust. We know where everything is coming from.
Thank you,
that's
Katerina.
something they could do.
Let me ask you a personal question. I think that's mainly also the topic, and because our audience is very diverse, from young leaders to entrepreneurs to government officials and business people, Asia is at the epicenter of the effects of climate change and has a chance to lead in its adaptations and mitigation for the next century. It has been reminded during the opening remarks of Eric Solem. What would you say to our young audience to keep having hope?
Well, I think it's not easy to, but I just would give one response to this is to hold political leaders and business leaders accountable. That is the only way. Because it's about power relationship. Those who hold power, either in the office or through wealth, or but they need to be held accountable. And every one of us are the agencies. We are not passive consumer. We are not passive kind of implementer of a government policy, and we should be proactive in making a difference.
Thank you, Vanarat. Megan, perhaps?
Sure, thank you. I love this question. So I'm sure everyone saw that the IPCC latest update came out yesterday, and as Antonio Guterres said, the climate time bomb is ticking. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
We are running out of time, but for young people, time has not yet run out. And I think that, as Vanarith said, it really is about holding governments and business accountable at this stage. And young people, this is your future. This is the world that you're going to inherit. And governments are dragging their heels, and they are beholden to big industry and vested interest to a large extent still. And that is causing things to move more slowly than they should. So, I completely agree with Vanarith. You need to hear make your political voice heard in whatever way is appropriate in your country. If you can vote, do vote, and make sure that your vote counts. Make sure that you ask your politicians what their approach and perspective is on climate change. If that's not an option, can you use shareholder pressure? Do you own shares in something? Can you buy a couple of shares so that you can have your voice made in a company that maybe isn't acting as much as it should? Can you also do things like, ask questions about transparency of products and services? There are lots of things that young people can do. And I appreciate that it can feel quite disempowering to be young and not in control politically, but you can make your voice heard and you can make a difference.
Thank you, Megan. Katarina?
Yes, so this is actually a great question. I lived in Singapore for 5 years, so I lived in that part of the world, and I know, and for me, that's really one of the best parts of the globe. And I know that the young people are very smart, educated, and very competitive. And so when we talk about a hope, yes, there is a hope. It's just beginning for them, and they can do whatever they imagine they can do. And so my message for the young audience is very simple. Act, innovate, engage, and collaborate. And that's the way how you can change everything.
Excellent. I think act, innovate, and engage. That's also the perfect transition for my last question, I think, to wrap up the session. So I've heard from the other sessions, and I've taken different keywords from previous sessions. So I'm sharing 3 of them, which was innovation, mindset shift, and lastly, holistic approach. So I think that Katarina, you already share your 3 keywords, but please feel free to add some more. But let me ask to Vanarat, what will be your 3 keywords to wrap up with that engaging conversations under the theme of hope and how we can prevent the climate change?
Thanks. I use the 3 keywords of the slogan of AVI, the Asian Vision Institute here.
Okay.
First, connect people. So what we're doing is connect people. And after connect people, we connect knowledge.
Yeah.
And then after connect knowledge, we connect actions, doing together. So this is a 3 keyword of our AVI. And I think then can be applicable to any conditions, any situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanarat. How about you, Megan?
I'm going to steal 2 words from one of my favorite podcasts, which are outrage and optimism. So outrage, because if you're not outraged at the state of things at the moment, you really, really, truly should be. So get outraged, but don't let that be disempowering. Get active. be optimistic. You have to remain optimistic. And, you know, when you work in this space and you know how dire things are, you know, it can be a bit overwhelming, but you just have to pull yourself out of it and be optimistic, because we can make this change happen. And then I would second you in terms of collaboration, because none of us can do it alone. And it really is about building not just collaborations, but unique and unusual collaborations as well. Find people who are, you know, not the usual suspects that you work with, and find ways to work with them and really drive change systemically.
Yeah, I will add a personal one also into that. It's resilience. I think resilience also, it's very important, and let's say also agility. It's those that I'm sharing with you. And Katharina, finally, to wrap up this excellent session.
You're right. It is an excellent session, and I know we always have to stop at one point, but I guess we could, you know, talk with you for so long about this very important topic. And so Valerie and Megan gave a great list of the keywords, which are actually action words in my mind. But what I would like to add is ethics, personal and business as well. Very important. And we want to hold businesses responsible in regards to their ethical operations, to make sure that they really do the things the right way. And we also want to invite you to call them upon those ethical actions that they're supposed to abide by.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to add this quote from Sir David Attenborough, which will be my final words for today. The truth is the natural world is changing, and you are totally dependent on that world. It provides food, water, and air. It is the most precious things we have, and we need to defend it. On this final note, I would like again to thank Mr. Eric Solem for his opening remarks, our guest speakers today, Megan, Katharina, and Vanarat, for these engaging conversations, our partners, AREA, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, the Australian ED, and all our participants today. For those who wish, our next and final session will be on green financing and ESG investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.